welcome to another episode of Undercurrent. I'm your host, Lucy Marchant, and here are some of the best stories from Season 16. Our first story is about an alliance of organisations who got together to start a new campaign called Safe Systems. They aim to reform the Tenancy Act and help women who are fleeing domestic violence. I met with 3 of the women behind the campaign. Over a third of Western Australia's homeless are women fleeing domestic violence. These women are not getting the help they need as the state is not currently well resourced to deal with the issue. I'm here with the women behind a new campaign called Safe Systems, which aims to help these women. Helen, what is the Safe Systems campaign all about?
What it's about is a group of organisations who work with women fleeing domestic violence have come together to say that while there might be good initiatives going on in justice, in child protection, in housing, etc., what we need is a much more cohesive response to the issues of domestic violence. So we represent different areas such as the legal service, the housing services, the women's refuge, women's health, the unions who are interested, for example, in domestic family violence leave-in awards. So there's a range of different groups who've come together to say we need a much more coordinated approach. We need whatever government is in power after the next state election to give a much better and higher priority to the issues around domestic violence. And so this coalition was formed. We've got a year, 11 months now till the next state election, and we hope to ensure that family and domestic violence is one of the absolute key issues that every candidate, every political party will address.
Legally, what needs to change at the moment?
What we need is a much more comprehensive approach to the law. We need a Domestic and Family Violence Act in its own right, with a whole range of components that sit within that actually give greater protection to victims and send a much stronger message to perpetrators who often, as we see, when presented in the courts for breaches of restraining orders, receiving, $200 fines, and these are after multiple breaches. So even though the law's changed in terms of breaches of restraining orders at 3 strikes and you're supposed to get an imprisonment sentence, we're finding that's not happening in quite a number of cases. So we really need a much more robust, proactive bit of legislation that then can influence practice and resource programs better to respond and protect victims, but also to work with perpetrators around their use of violence and how that, there's opportunities there for change as well.
So let's talk about the women, let's talk about the problems that they're facing, their health, physically, mentally. What sorts of issues are they facing?
Well, women continue to live in fear for their own safety and the safety of their children after the relationship has ended. There are significant health, social and economic effects from family and domestic violence. And so it's very important, actually it's crucial to have systems that are safe for women and children and that support their recovery. And this would include safe and affordable housing and also legal processes that are affordable, accessible, and also reflect the seriousness of women's experiences and ongoing experiences after the relationship has ended. And also things like the paid domestic violence leave are also important supports to women and give them opportunities to seek the supports and services that they need when they're trying to recover from the violence. And of course, those effective and timely perpetrator programs are enormously important when it comes to women's and children's safety.
So how can people help? How can people get involved, help with the campaign?
We have a website where people, organisations can put their logos to show that they're supporting the Safe Systems campaign. What we've also done is written to each of the major parties and advised them that the coalition has been launched, that we'd like to know what their policies are, that we're happy to meet with them to talk further about their policies and what they can do. We intend to publish those responses on the website so everyone can see how the parties have responded to these issues around family violence. So it's very much geared around ensuring that the political parties do take this matter very seriously and do look at what is genuinely needed to ensure that the systems that we have in place are much better coordinated so that women and children are safe.
Are there any ways that myself, the viewers, yourselves can get involved? Anything small that they can do to help out?
Well, I think they can sign on to, there's a website that we have, www.safesystemswa.org, so they can go on and sign on their pledge of support as an individual or an organisation. I think they can also become involved in any actions that may roll out over the next 6 to 9 months that will be up on the website. So there's opportunities for people to perhaps attend a rally or sign a petition or those types of actions that might come out of this campaign.
That's great. Thank you very much. The Royal Commission and award-winning film Spotlight have once again highlighted the issue of child sexual abuse. This is people thinking about what the Catholic Church is doing today to prevent child abuse. The Archdiocese of Perth might just have the answer. James Rogers with the report.
It's no secret that the Catholic Church has a disgraceful record of dealing with cases of sexual abuse. The Safeguarding Project seeks to change that. Launched here in Perth last year, it's the first of its kind in Australia. I spoke with Andrea Muslin, Project Coordinator and Police Officer.
I believe the Catholic community has much for which to thank the Royal Commission in bringing to light the areas where we are needing to face the past and to make every effort possible to change the future. I do not believe we can afford to sit back and wait for the Commission's final report and the recommendations to be published. We must act boldly now.
The Safeguarding Project has been implemented in order to create safer churches or create the church as a child-safe organisation. That's our aim. Our aim is to transport the church into a safe organisation. But that said, James, in the work that I've been doing over the last 16 months, for want of a better word, our churches are safe places. And the problem is that they can always be safer. And so that's the angle that we're working on. I think, from media coverage in the past, it would appear that churches aren't safe places. But from my knowledge and my working knowledge of recent months, I can tell you that for the best part, they are safe, but they can always be safer. And so safeguarding and the Safeguarding Project is about reducing the opportunity. And unfortunately, anywhere where children are, there is opportunity. And historically, in churches and church-run organisations, there has been large amounts of opportunity for child sex offenders to not only gain access to children, but to commit the crimes and to get away with it. Now that said, James, there is not as much opportunity organically in churches as there was historically, because no longer are the orphanages run by the churches, no longer are there large residential colleges for children who don't reside with their parents. Unmarried mothers or teenage pregnancies, whilst we have lots of services to help these women, there are not residential colleges where we look after them. So times have changed. We are in a completely different era to where we were historically. But like I said, wherever there are children, there is opportunity and there is risk. And therefore we've identified that, and we set out to make our church a very safe place for children, and the safest it can possibly be. And that doesn't mean that we're going to ensure the safety of children, because we can't do that. But we're going to heighten it, and we're going to do our utmost to make sure our church is a safe church. people are, sometimes think, well, I can't do it. It's not my job. That's not my job to do that. And that's what I like about the Safeguarding Project, because I have all these people who have come up and said, well, yes, it is my job. It's not officially my job. I'm not going to be paid to do this job, but it is my job because it's important that I play my part. And I, in the training of all the safeguarding officers, I make sure that I'm very clear around the fact that it's not your job to solve this problem for the world. It's your job to play your part. And once you do that on the self level, that's when change is going to come about. That's when real change comes about. So now what we have, which we've never had before, are 2 designated officers, and in some parishes more than 2, designated officers who are there for that purpose, to help, to listen, and then to report. And I make it very clear to the safeguarding officers that they are not the fix-it person. They don't have to fix this problem. They're not the judge and jury. They're not the counsellor. They are the person who will listen to a complaint and refer that complaint on within statutory procedures and requirements. So that's their primary role. And we promote that. We promote that in the parishes. The parish has a big porch poster with their photographs, with their contact details. We are now currently setting up websites for all the parishes, so if someone's got a concern, they may go to the website and all the information will be on the website. Well, it would be a good idea that all organisations that deal with children have safeguarding measures in place, many of which do, I'm sure they do. And as I said earlier, wherever there are children, there's risk. So therefore, the sheer fact that children are in their care would then deem that safeguarding is required. And I think across the board we're getting better at that. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but we're getting better at it. And I think the realisation, and Royal Commission has brought that realisation into the government sector, well, non-government sector more so, and into schools, that we do actually have to have an active, proactive role in protecting children. Just responding to it when it happens is not enough. We have a responsibility to protect children, and adults ultimately are responsible for the protection of children.
You should report any case of abuse to the police. 131 444. James Rogers reporting for Undercurrent.
More than 1,000 Australian companies and 800 individuals have been named in the Panama Papers. Elise asked the public what they thought.
With over 1,000 Australian companies and 800 individuals linked with the Panama Papers and the recent proposal from Malcolm Turnbull to change the way we are taxed, we took to the streets to ask the public about the current tax system and tax evasion. Do you think it's right for the government to cut company tax as they're proposing to do?
No.
No.
No, definitely not.
No, they don't need tax cut, no.
And why do you think that?
I just feel that they've got the upper hand all the time.
Because the corporate, they never care about you and me. They only care about the big shareholders.
The company tax is a very good revenue for the government, so they should really take advantage of, making the money out of who makes the big money in this country.
I don't think it's right for big companies because they make a lot of money, so they should be able to put back in the community through tax.
The Panama Papers, which is a list of basically companies that have offshore accounts in order to avoid tax, and it's also been revealed that Malcolm Turnbull is involved with similar tax evasion. What do you think about these practices technically being legal?
If I was a business owner and I was paying, 60% tax, I'd probably, yes, scored. But as a small person paying, so much of my income, hard-earned income, I feel it's unfair.
Well, I never avoid tax, and I'm just a normal person. So why should a millionaire, multimillionaire, or a prime minister or a minister, why shouldn't they pay taxes like what we do?
So what do you think the first step is to making the companies live up to their tax responsibilities?
I don't know, transparency probably.
Yeah, it'll start with the government, laying down the law, I suppose, yeah.
Each nation should have its own a review of the law and try and make it more suitable for their country.
We might establish a watchdog specializing in chasing up the corporates.
So why should the average worker and low-income earning individual pay tax when companies can avoid it?
No, I don't think they should.
Well, the obvious answer is we shouldn't. Yeah, there should be equality of some sort.
Well, it's not right. They shouldn't have to if companies can avoid it, but if companies are like made to, then it does still make sense.
I come from Italy, see, like where everyone has been avoiding tax for a long time, and look where we are now. So I think as an Australian myself now, it's very important for us to do our part in paying taxes and not get influenced too much by what the big companies do. Otherwise, we can just go into recession and become like Greece and all the rest of the poorest European countries.
Elise Van Aken for Undercurrent.
Stick around for more of our best stories after a short break. Welcome back to Undercurrent. In the past decades, various studies have established a link between artificial lighting and an increased risk of sleep disorder, obesity, heart disease, depression and cancer. Our journalist Laura met with Dr. Pendoli to talk about the public health concern.
We are at Pendoli Environmental Office, an Australian marine and conservation consultancy. Dr. Pendoli is the chief scientist and the owner. She has a special interest in artificial light pollution, and she tries to make people aware of the risk for human health. We knew intrusive lighting like blue light could be a nuisance for health. Why this is an alarming fact and a major public health concern?
The major public health concerns are around the relationship between exposure to light at night and things like obesity and sleeplessness and cancer, things like that. So LEDs are used by people all the time. They're cheap. They're cheap to run, easy to use, but they're also shockingly bad for humans. They're very elevated in short wavelength blue light, and it's a short wavelength blue light that has the biggest impact on humans, because the light coming through your bedroom window from those street lights will affect you. Even if your eyes are closed, if that blue light is coming into your bedroom, it's penetrating your eyelids and it's affecting your melatonin system. It's driving that melatonin levels down, and so it can lead to all of these other health issues. The link between being exposed to artificial light at night and these health issues is caused by the effect of the light on the human melatonin system. So at night when we go to bed, as it gets darker outside, the levels of melatonin in our bodies increase, and that's what causes us to go to sleep. But if those levels, if we're exposed to light, that melatonin isn't released, and so we don't get sleepy anymore. And if you don't get sleepy, your other hormonal systems in your body are disrupted as well. And that's what can cause things like heart disease and diabetes and cancers. And there's a link between the level or the risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer in night shift workers. So things like nurses have been shown to have an increased risk of developing breast cancer if they've done a lot of years of night shift work.
There aren't any standards for human health about artificial light. So do you think there needs to be standards?
Yeah, definitely. The only standards we have for artificial light in Australia are produced by the Institute of Illuminating Engineers, and they provide standards for things like street lighting, emergency access, internal lighting inside buildings, things like that, and intrusive lighting. But there's no standard anywhere in Australia, or in fact anywhere in the world, that talks about the health effects of artificial light. And it's a huge gap. And it's all come about because we don't know that much about it. It's an emerging field. It was only, as recently as 2006 when global experts came together to talk about the effects of artificial light on humans and to recognise it as an area that is high risk and that needs to be researched further. So it's only recently that that scientists have actually started to understand how artificial light at night affects the human body.
You hosted a seminar for members of Perth Local Government Association. You spoke about the latest technology and techniques to measure light and manage harmful light. Is the government aware of that issue?
No, and that's what we found when we did this workshop. We had, I think, 18 local councils were represented, the environmental health officers from all these local councils. And it was really to educate them about the effects of artificial light on humans, how to measure it, and how to manage it. And the feedback was amazing, that people were fascinated. They had these, officers had no idea how bad artificial light could be for humans, and they're not alone. It's such a new area that most people are not aware of the impacts of artificial light at night. And what it needs is things like lighting ordinances. We need to draft up regulations or local standards that can start to control this artificial light at night, because there's nothing in place at the moment. In the same way that smoking was. So in the early days, people weren't aware of how bad smoking was for us, and then it took a long time to educate people about it and to teach them that, there are problems around it. And that's where we are with this issue with artificial light. We think in the next 20, 30 years, it will become well recognised and people will understand it.
How can we live with blue light? What precaution we can take?
Manage your lights. If you've got lights outside, control them, direct them onto what you want to be, illuminating. If it's your footpath or your deck, you put shields around it and you direct it so it's not escaping into the atmosphere. You're not wasting light. The other thing you can do is with your iPhone or your mobile phones or your tablets, computers, things like that, you can download an app. It's a blue light filter application that will let you switch off the blue light coming from that screen. And so, at night when you want to go to sleep, you switch this on and it reduces the blue light that's coming out of the screen, and so it's not disrupting your brain waves and disrupting your melatonin system. So in places like Japan, children are required to wear orange filtered glasses when they're working on computers to filter out that blue light so it doesn't damage their eyes.
This is Laura Bayumi for Undercurrent.
Residents in Hillary's are angered over a debacle with Western Power. The residents say that workers sprayed silicone over power lines around their houses, which has caused damage to their health, properties and cars. I met with one of the residents to find out more. I'm here with Bruce, who claims to have been affected by the spraying of a substance on the power lines around his house that have affected his vehicles, his health and his property. What has happened to your skin and health since the spraying of the lines on your property?
Well, when they first sprayed it took me a while to find out it was silicone, and since then I've been waiting for them to clean it up or do something, and nothing's actually happened. So I started working on one of my motorhomes and I got it all over my hands, and the data sheet says wash it off with soap and water, so I kept washing my hands, and then I kept spreading it further up my hands, and then I started getting major headaches and it started burning, and now I've got all silicone burns up my hands. And then the headaches, they wouldn't go for 3 days, and the whole lot is feels like it's heat activated.
So wait, these symptoms that you've been having, these skin rashes and these headaches, has the doctor told you that it is likely that the silicone is responsible for that?
Yeah, it does appear to be silicone related, and there are other neighbours that have also been affected by the silicone. There's a bloke up the road that's got the burns over his whole body, and he's having a lot of trouble with it. So he's off to see the same person. But yeah, his burns are a lot worse than mine. There's other neighbours that are affected, and there'll be a lot of other people out there that are affected that don't realise. They haven't realised the damage to their property. All I know about is the damage to motor vehicles. When silicone gets on the paint of these cars, they'll never be painted again. A lot of mine have been affected. Roofs, gutters, where all this stuff is, the surface won't be painted because of the silicone. It penetrates through the paint, it gets into it, and that's it, can't be painted. So it's over all the vehicles. But working on my own vehicle that had it on, that hasn't been cleaned by them or anything, I've got it into my skin, and yeah, it's made me sick.
How do you know what happened? Did you witness the spraying?
No, I came back a day and a half, heading towards 2 days after it had happened, and then I seen all my stuff was all covered. So I didn't actually see it. Someone's given me some footage and showed me what transpired.
Can you describe the footage that you have? Can you describe how they sprayed the lines?
Yeah. The line is meant to have a fine mist spray around the insulators, a very fine mist spray that only goes on the insulators. When you see the footage, you can see the clouds, big mobs of it, drifting up the street. You know, they sprayed it with no warning that they were spraying it. They sprayed it on a Sunday, right? Nobody was informed. They just turned up on a Sunday, lunchtime, and started spraying, right? And everybody thought, oh, well, they wouldn't spray anything unsafe. The lady next door thought it was just water. People believed it was just water that they were spraying, washing them.
How much damage has been caused in sort of a dollar value?
I wouldn't want to even guess that, eh? It's all over the roofs. It's from the front of the property right to the back of the property. There's both motorhomes, the 2 bobcats, the tractor, 3 vehicles are all covered. My motorbike and the scooters, both jet skis, are all covered in it. Everything around me here has got a fine coating spray on it as well.
What do you want to be done to sort of fix the problem?
Well, I think the first thing you need is a public awareness, because there's other people that have got it all over their stuff. They need to be notified, and then they also know if they've got lots of this silicone around, it's no good for your health, right? The joke is they're keeping everyone locked apart. There's obviously workers, because they weren't wearing breathing apparatus or that type of safety gear. They were fully clothed. You can see it in the videos. You know, they're going to have health issues. They've been breathing the stuff in.
Have you had any other issues with Western Power in the past, or is this your first bad experience?
No, this is the first thing. You know, someone just made a big monumental stuff up by spraying it in a suburban area. You know, it wasn't meant to be for that. You know, they'll argue the point and say they've been doing it for years here, but I don't think they have. They've just been cleaning them, you know, because if they were spraying silicone around like this a couple of years ago, I would have noticed it. It wrecks your stuff and it wrecks your health, and people need to be aware.
Lucy Marchant, reporting for Undercurrent. And that's it for today. Thanks for your company on this episode of Undercurrent. Make sure you catch up with us next week for some brand new stories on season 17 of Undercurrent. Take care, and we'll see you next time.